We are live. Oh my God, that scared me.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
How's everybody doing? How are you feeling about rejection tonight, which is the subject of our webinar, something no one likes?
No, well, some people like it, but that's a whole other, that's another webinar.
That's another webinar.
Yeah.
So every writer has to deal with rejection. And that's just a fact. It doesn't matter who you are. We can name every great writer throughout history who has had to be rejected.
I'm just going to name one.
Yeah.
James Joyce. People disliked Ulysses in the publishing business so much that no one would publish that book. And it was voted the best novel of the 20th century, and no one would publish. He had to publish it himself. So this is what I say to myself when I get rejected. If James Joyce and J.K. Rowling and Jane Austen, and what's his name, the Catcher in the Rye guy? Oh, J.D. Salinger. If those guys, people, get rejected, who am I to not get rejected? You're part of a club, the great writers who got rejected club. That's how I look at it.
But to deal effectively with rejection,
that's just the emotional level. Now we're going to get to the.
It's so hugely important for actually getting published.
To get rejected.
To deal with it effectively.
See,
rather than.
Yes, that's why I'm dealing with the emotional part first.
Because honestly, we see a lot that people are so overwhelmed emotionally by the rejection that they give up. And that is
Giving
sad.
up is the surest way never to be published.
That is true.
If you want to not get published, that's what you should do.
And it's particularly sad when we see beautiful books.
Yeah.
Wonderful books that we absolutely feel have an incredible place in the world, that those books end up just in people's file cabinets, or in this case, computers.
In their files. Yeah.
In their files.
Yeah, right.
So we are going to talk tonight about how to deal with this issue. And the first thing we want to talk about is today's marketplace, which sucks. Yeah. Let's just be real about it.
It sucks and it doesn't suck. Okay. I mean, if you want to get published by, there's three ways to get published. One with the big five, HarperCollins, Random House, whatever, the Penguin, and then independent publishers that aren't owned by giant corporations, like Norton, like our publisher, one of our publishers, Workman. There's some huge independent publishers and some tiny ones, and then self-publishing. There are enormously diverse ways of getting published now that there weren't 10 years ago. So in that way, it's great. But if you want to get published by the big five, which most people seem to want to do because they don't
let's just clarify
know what it is.
Exactly who that is.
Okay.
You didn't just do that, did you?
Kind of, yeah. Okay. HarperCollins, Random House, Simon Schuster, those people.
So there are these conglomerates that are the big five, and then there are close to conglomerates like Houghton Mifflin, for example, is another huge company. These are all the companies that you need an agent to approach. Right. And what we're seeing, two things in the marketplace of the big five general world and the agent world, which is a disturbing trend for writers, which is we're seeing lots of writers, first of all, who have been successfully published throughout their lives, who are no longer able to get published. We're seeing first-time authors turned down at incredible rates. And we're seeing certain genres really pushed aside because they're considered overpublished. And
there's no room at the end. Memoir, for instance.
Memoir is a huge one, and there's others like parenting, for example.
At the turn of the century, if you had a great story, you could get a memoir published very easily, but that's not the case anymore because there've been too many memoirs that have failed.
Yeah.
But the big publishers now are gravitating toward celebrities. If you're a Kardashian, that's the quickest way to get published. And that's such a sad thing to even have come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And yet it's true. And there's also a disturbing trend where we have people who've met agents or editors at writers' conferences, and they're all enthusiastic, and they're like, "Oh, this is a wonderful project," or they send an email and they get one right back. "Oh my God, this is right up my alley." And then you get ghosted. That's it. You send 14 different emails, you call, and you just don't hear anything back. There's been an incredible decline in civility.
Yeah.
In basic manners. My parents are English, and they're like pleases and thank yous, and yes, you respond. Even if this is to say, no, this is not for me, at least then you know they've looked at you and they've, whatever. But just, we see so many times, just no response at all. So it's not you. It's the way the business is going.
And as someone who was an active agent for many years, one of the most frustrating things is when you have a book you love, you send it out and you get tons of rejection. So agents are feeling the burn of publishers and the ghosting as well from editors, etc. And so they are extremely cautious about what they're going to take on. And they're looking for people with very, very big platforms. Even if you're not a known celebrity like the Kardashians, still someone who has...
How many Twitter followers?
Exactly.
Facebook people? Do you have a mailing list that has 1 billion people on it? I mean, most people don't have that. And, it comes down to, what am I going to spend my life doing? Writing or tweeting? Am I going to write a book, or am I going to spend my life, developing my platform? And that's a very difficult conundrum to have to face. I mean, even with smaller publishers now, with independents, I was just talking to an editor at a great publishing house, tiny little, but very well respected, and they do great books. I was going to say, "Oh, I got a book for you." I said, "It's perfect for you guys." And she said, "Well, what's the author's platform?" I'm like, "Don't you even want to know what the book is about?" She says, "No, I've got a mandate from my boss. In order for me to do a book, this author has to be able to sell the book themselves."
Yeah.
That's where we are in the world.
So we as writers have to start anticipating the no's so that we can fight back.
Not the no's. The no, niet.
The opposite
Zero,
of
G,
yeses.
pang, yes.
So that we can figure out how to get to yes and how to convince people that this is the right book.
That's a good title for something. How to Get to Yes.
That is a good title.
That's a good title.
Yeah.
Nobody steal that.
So figuring this out, a huge part of this is making sure that every step that you are taking is the right step so that you don't get a no. So David was just saying before we started, one of the most common things we hear is, that people aren't connecting with agents. We look at an agent list that someone sent their book to, and they're not the right agents. So you're automatically going to get a no because you're sending to the wrong agent. And this gets us to the subject of research, which is one of our pet subjects.
It is. Ariel was an agent for many, many years, and it's very easy to, if you do a modicum of research, to realize that she does not like fantasy or science fiction. And yet every day she would get some query that says, "I know you're going to love my book, The Unicorns of Narnia." She's not going to love The Unicorns of Narnia. Just the title alone makes her squeamish. She doesn't want those. She used to respond to these people. And by the end, she was like, "Just no, no." You didn't even bother to do any research as to the books that she does and she likes.
Yeah.
So why is she going to take her time out of her busy life to even say, "Sorry, this is not for me"? Because you didn't do your work. That's your work as a writer. And how do we find out? How do we find the agents who are going to love your book research? You find out what I do whenever I'm attempting to sell a book. I make a list of between 15 and 20 books that are similar to mine in the broadest sense of that word. Of course, there's no book exactly like your book. Conversely, you never want to be the writer who says, "My book is like no book ever written, man." because that's the surest way not to get published.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the broad strokes of characters that are similar themes, similar writing style, things that you have in common with a book. Okay, and so you make your list of 15 to 20 books, go to the acknowledgement section. They'll say, I'd like to thank my agent, I'd like to thank my editor. And then you research those people. Find out where they went to high school, where they went to college, what are their hobbies.
Or they may be the biggest agent,
Right.
the head of an agency, which may be harder to get them, but the agency represents this kind of book, and you might want to look at the younger agents there and start researching them to see if they might be the right match.
Because then we also get lists, people say, here's my agent list, and it's the biggest agents in the world. 10 of the largest agents in the world. This person represents Harry Potter books, and this one does the Hunger Games. Those people, they don't need any more books. They don't need any more authors. They have all their authors. I mean, yes, you could maybe send a query, but you have to, what I do is it's kind of like the high school senior who's putting together their list of places they want to go to college. So you've got some, some wish at the top, some places that are, Stanford, Harvard, whatever. And then you work your way down to schools that are not so famous and not so exclusive. And then you work down to your state colleges, and then you've got like Joe's Barber College, some independent publisher who lives in his mom's basement.
So let me just clarify one thing that David is saying, is that the concentration that people often have on agents and the big five, or those larger publishers that you send your book to, especially in this day and age, although at any time, may not be the right place for your book at all.
Right.
And that going directly to great independent publishers who do books like yours could be an even better way to get published. So when you make this list, you want to make sure to include all of these different places, because also, if you get a yes from an independent publisher or interest from an independent publisher, that allows you to tell the agents that you've queried that you have interest from a publisher. And that's going to help get to yes with the agents, even if your book is in one of these categories that people are having trouble selling in, or just having trouble with, period.
You want to create a competitive environment for your book, so that when, as Ariel says, one person says, I'm interested, immediately you go out to everybody else. And again, you will hear from agents all the time, we only want exclusive submissions. You can't submit to anybody else. That's just ridiculous. They want that because then they can sit on your book for years if they want, and no one else is going to take a look at it. Every agent I know has a recurring nightmare. They're walking down the street, people point at them and goes, there's the agent who passed on Harry Potter. Because every agent has passed on a giant book. And when they see in that email someone else is interested, immediately, boom, they become interested.
And before, I wanted to speak to this, but I've just gotten a text from our wonderful assistant, Christy, who said we forgot to make our announcement at the beginning.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I just want to let everybody know, if for some reason you have to sign off during this webinar, it is going to be available forever or until the end of YouTube, whichever comes first.
Well, those will probably be simultaneous.
Yeah. The only thing is that you won't be able to post your questions live. You can post them now in the group chat bar, and we will try and address all questions that are asked. So the live chat, unfortunately, does not get archived. So if people put URLs or whatever in there that are interesting links for people to use, you have to copy and paste them now, because they won't be available after the webinar is over. If you have any tech trouble, you can email our assistant, Christy, and her email is kristi@thebookdoctors.com. And she'll also put her email address in the group chat box if she hasn't done that already. Unfortunately, we can't see the group chat. If your video freezes, try refreshing your browser. And if the problem continues, try closing other applications. And
if you freeze, just shake your head very rapidly like that. That often helps.
Yeah. And if you are looking for more publishing info beyond this, and you got this through a friend or what have you, you can sign up for our newsletter at thebookdoctors.com, which announces other free webinars and has lots of other interesting publishing information, or at least we think it's
we think it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. And then lastly, if you don't have a copy of the newest edition of our book and you buy it, and you send us the receipt, then you get automatically put into a pool for a webinar where you get to pitch your book and get it critiqued.
It's like an online pitch-a-palooza, which is kind of like American Idol for books. You pitch, we announce a winner, and the winner gets introduced to an agent.
Okay, so now back to David's point about creating action. So typically what happens is someone sends out 20 query letters, and let's say the query letter is good. Okay, it's not.
That's a big if.
It's a big if, but let's just say you've gotten to the point where it's good. Okay, and typically what happens, even out of 20 people, if you get 1 or 2 responses, we consider that a good response.
Well.
Okay,
yes.
So let's say you get 1 response, and the person asks for a manuscript, you send it to them, and you never hear from them again. This is typically what happens. What we advocate instead is you get that one person saying, I'd like you to send your manuscript. We then prompt you to email every other person, those 19 other people that you had already sent the query letter to, and say immediately, I'm already getting requests for my manuscript. I'm pasting in my query that I sent you the other day or what have you, in case it got lost. So you're already creating a sense of something's happening here and you're not taking part in it. Then let's say someone is interested in your manuscript, they want to set up a phone call with you. You email everyone, whether they responded or not, to the first email that you sent and say, I'm now setting up calls with interested agents. For those who never responded, I'm once again pasting in my query since I didn't hear from you. And for those who did ask for the manuscript, say, let me know if you'd like to set up a call. And then if you were to get an offer from someone, you again email everyone, I've received an offer and I'd like to know when I can hear back from you. I'm planning to make a decision by the end of next week. We have so many examples of how, using this strategy, people went from books that they considered dead to having 10 agent offers and then auctions for their book. To create a sense for these people that they are missing out, best ways to not get rejected. And part of not getting rejected is not hearing.
Yeah, to get to yes.
To get to yes.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people feel, oh, I don't want to impose on the agent. Oh, I don't want to be pushy. Say, hey, asshole, how come you haven't gotten back to me? Of course you don't want to do that. You don't want to seem like you're going to be a difficult person to deal with. I always put my best foot forward. I'm nice as pie, but I am persistent. You can be nice and be persistent.
Yep.
And that persistence we've seen pay off, as Ariel said, over and over and over again. Yep. Because if you don't send those things out and you sort of feel bad about, bothering the agent, well, there's 999,000 million authors who don't feel bad. And those are the people who are going to get published.
Okay, let's talk about bad query letters.
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, let's talk about the general idea of the half-baked
query letter or manuscript.
Or manuscript. Yeah. It's like inviting someone over to your house for a cake and it's half-baked. It's like liquid and a little solid. Here's the cake. Enjoy. No one wants that. And so many times we see people come to us and say, oh, I've been rejected by 100 agents. And we read the query and the query is just not good. They haven't gone over the query. They haven't road tested it. They haven't gotten professional help with it. And then we look at the manuscript. The first page explains the whole book. People do this so many times in a novel or in a nonfiction book. They explain what's going to happen. Why am I reading the book? Because you've already explained it to me. They haven't had sufficient beta readers. Beta readers are people who are going to read your book and intelligently critique it for you, intelligent. And they haven't had a professional editor look at their book. I mean, I've had 16 books published, and before I send it out, I pay somebody. And in fact, this book that we're going out with now paid 4 different people. Yeah. And I've gotten dozens of people to read it. And every time I got word back from people, the book got better. And when we first sent it out, it wasn't as good as it should have been.
Yeah.
And now it's
and
much better.
The other problem is with doing that, and this was true for David as well, is that some of your favorite people are the people you send it to first.
Bridges are burned.
And then sometimes we're going to get, someone just asked a question about this, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but sometimes you can't resend to these people. Right. Sometimes you can. So, way to know that your query is not right, and then we'll get to Manuscript. If you have sent out queries and no one has responded, it's not the right query, okay? So if you get to 40 and that's the case, you got to retool the query.
And if you've sent out queries and you've gotten, 5 or 6 people who are reading your manuscript and they're all saying no, and first of all, when someone says no, just sidebar, I always ask them, is there anything you can think of I can do to improve the manuscript? And sometimes I didn't know no one's going to respond, but sometimes you'll get just a nugget. Oh, the ending needs to be more this, or the beginning needs to be this, or I didn't sympathize with the main character. You're getting free advice from a top-notch professional. If you get rejected and they give you these little nuggets, it's a way to learn from your rejection, which is incredibly valuable and important. So make sure the quickest way to yes is to have a brilliant that displays the value of the book, that says the plot, but not too much of the plot. You don't want to give away the ending, and shows who you are and how you're going to be an awesome author to work with, and you're going to go out and sell your book everywhere. And
actually that gets to, we're going to get to all these questions, but there's an interesting question here that has to do with just that, which is, if I've sent my novel out in the past, oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong one. Would I get rejected based solely on the fact that I have no experience, no referrals, and no lit related degrees? Shout out to Jersey.
Shout out to Jersey. Yo, what's up?
You could, but this is another anticipation of a no. You see that that's an issue. So how are you going to get around that? So let's say you've written a novel where the nurse, and you yourself are a nurse. You've never taken a creative writing class. You have no experience with fiction whatsoever, but you are a bona fide nurse, and that's what your protagonist is. Then that's the thing you want to talk about.
So many times we see people send these queries. They don't mention the most pertinent things about themselves in regard to their novel.
Let's say you have a publicity and marketing career in a completely other field. Well, guess what is one of the most important things you need to do to get your novel out in the world? You need to be a publicity and marketing pro. So I don't care if you work for, your local gas and electric company. If you know marketing and publicity, important. So you have to find the kernel of who you are. Maybe it's your sense of humor, and you're going to make fun of the fact that you've never done any of these things. But you have to make yourself seem desirable in one way or another.
Look, J.K. Rowling, she had no experience as a writer. She had no platform. She didn't have any of that stuff. But she also wrote a great book, and she got it into the right hands. Yes, people are more and more looking for you to be an expert or you to have a platform. However, there are ways around that. As you say, if you don't have the experience, you've got to figure out how to take what you have and spin it so that it's clear you're going to be a fantastic advocate for your book, and you're not going to stop until you sell many copies of this book.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
oh yeah, perseverance.
Because we have a lot of questions here.
Okay.
So,
all right.
perseverance is perhaps the most important one single thing. Deal with rejection.
Well, yes, I completely agree with that. And there are two kinds of perseverance. Mm-hmm. There's the kind of perseverance, and there's the
stupid.
And the stupid kind of perseverance is the person who sends out and doesn't get any response, and then sends out the same query another 100 times.
Yeah.
If 100 people haven't responded, there's something wrong with your query, and you need some professional help. Same with the novel or the nonfiction book. If you've been turned down over and over and over and over and over again, there's probably a good chance there's something wrong with your book. That with a trained professional. You need to get people. So many people hoard their books close to them, like, oh, someone's going to steal my book. I don't want to show anybody my book because it's very precious to me. Well, that's how you're going to get to know. That's a good way to get to know, is by not showing the book to anybody and not making it better and not taking advice from not only just the public who are readers, but from, again, trained professionals, editors who are really, really good.
And trained professionals also include librarians and booksellers. So this doesn't necessarily mean spending money if you don't have a budget to work on your book. It can mean relying on those professionals who you can approach, and which is a wonderful thing. There's also, right now is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And there's all these people writing in different genres that love those genres, and that you can share your pitch and work with. And in these, there are people in coffee shops somewhere near you doing their novels, and then
they're all online. They're all
online. So there's many different resources to see. But what David is saying about making sure you get it out there and practicing your pitch and reading your work and all of that kind of stuff, that's what's going to get you closer and closer to a place where you understand what people react negatively to, so that you can change the book or do what needs to be done to get it into a place where it can sell.
When I first decide on a book that I'm writing, I write a pitch for the book. And whenever someone asks me, so what are you up to? Now, I don't want to be like one of these people who is in your face, and it was like, I can't stand this when people are like, oh, let me tell you about my book. I say, I'm writing a book. If that person I'm talking to says, oh, what's the book about? Then I have 1 minute, and 1 minute alone, to answer that question. And it's anytime you have a product, you want to road test it. You want to see what works and what doesn't. And when you start pitching, you pitch your book for a minute, you'll see people like, shoo, they glaze over at certain points. Those points you get rid of. And some parts of it people get excited about. And sometimes your pitch needs to be really short, and sometimes it needs to take the full minute. There are many organizations that will help you depending on what kind of book you're writing. If you're writing a kid's book, there's an organization called the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, and they have a big national organization, and they have local organizations within the SCBWI umbrella. And they're online. They have conferences every year, and you can go to one of these conferences and you can have an editor or an agent who specifically writes, agents or edits books for kids. There's the Mystery Writers of America, the Romance Writers of America, the Sci-Fi Writers of America. If you go to a great writers conference or a book fair sometimes, you can get the opportunity to pitch your book. We had a fantastic client of ours who went to and she did all this research, and she lives in Miami, the Miami Book Fair. She literally tracked down this agent, her around for that exact moment when the agent wasn't busy, the agent wasn't doing a lot of stuff. Respect, quickly made her pitch, or send me the book. She'd been pitching this a long time, trying to get a book deal. And after sending this, her query to the agent, like in 3 weeks later, she had an agent, and 3 weeks after that, she had a book deal. No, she wasn't a writer. She didn't have a platform. She wasn't experienced, but she was a teacher, and she was writing a book about teaching. So that was her area of expertise.
All right, and just before we get to questions, one last piece, which is the emotional piece of this and how to deal.
Yeah.
Worst thing that you can possibly do is sit and wait.
Well, there's one worse thing.
Oh.
You can violent and angry manner to those who are rejecting you.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's that.
There's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
apart from that.
And not occupying yourself while you're sending your book out and it's coming in.
Right.
You need to keep, whether it's working on another piece of writing or taking the pieces of advice that you're getting and continuing to work on your book and making it better while you're getting these rejections is key, because just being there waiting and receiving and taking no action is going to be a recipe for disaster.
Oh God, yes, it's disastrous.
So do you want to say what you do?
In terms when I get rejected?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so my way of dealing with rejection is rage. If you notice this with the purple hair, I tend to rage. I've worked very hard to control that. But when I get rejected, the first thing, my teeth grit, my neck, they all pop out, my fists clench in little balls, and I keep a list of everyone who's rejected me. And occasionally I look at the list and go, oh, these raggedy Rick. So when I get this book published, they're going to hear from me. And then when I finally do get that book published, I send them all a beautiful email. Oh, you remember that book that we were talking about? Well, guess what? It's being published. Thank you very much for all of your help. Exclamation point. Love, David. So that's my personal way of dealing with it.
And the reason we share it is because it helps David get through it. We're not saying, this is a fabulous thing that you should do. No. You have to figure out the thing that helps you get through the rejection so that you don't give up.
What time is it? 8:32. Should we tell a quick story about perseverance, or should we answer some questions?
I think let's answer some questions. Okay, the first question is Tor the only way to publish sci-fi fantasy?
Oh.
No.
No.
I'm assuming you're talking about adult sci-fi and fantasy. All the big publishers have some division that publishes sci-fi and fantasy, and then there's all kinds of independent publishers that publish sci-fi and fantasy. And that's where research comes in, and also where your librarian and your independent bookseller come in, because you can go in and say, who else publishes sci-fi and fantasy? I need to make a list. Here's the kind of book that I'm writing. Who do you think would be appropriate for that book?
And of course, within the fiefdom of science fiction and fantasy, there's all kinds of hard science fiction. There's sexy fantasy, there's soft fantasy, there's romance fantasy, there's every kind of fantasy you can imagine, and science fiction as well. And each of these publishers, they do a different kind of thing. So it's your job to find somebody out there is waiting for your book.
And if you're doing YA, young adult, that's a whole other thing as well.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. How much does focusing on the business end undermine the writing process? Is it possible a writer could wind up writing for an audience? About this question, but I think it says rather than following a compulsion to write.
I don't quite understand.
So the question is, are you just solely concentrating on the marketing instead of the writing
we were talking about that before. You're going to spend your life tweeting, or you're going to write a book?
Yeah.
Well, everybody has to find their own happy balance between churning out a novel or a piece of nonfiction and developing a way to sell the book. We just interviewed a fantastic writer named Kwame Alexander, and he started a publishing company. And all the writers where he published were like, they had no clue about how to sell a book. And he kept telling them, look, you got to go out and sell these things. I'm like, no, dude, I just want to write my book. Well, none of those people really, I don't think, have sold many books. I mean, sometimes a writer gets lucky and they don't do anything to sell a book and the book blows up. That's just like going to the local store and buying a lottery ticket for $1 and you win $20 million. The chances of that happening are just above zilch and zero and nil and null. I try to, like when I get up in the morning, I try to do just an hour of business related to my book in some way, whether it is engaging on Facebook or Twitter, or I'm interviewing an author or something like that, which, by the way, is a great thing to do. If you get a website, get yourself a website, it's easy to do. Interview great writers who you think are wonderful and do similar things to you. It's a way of building your platform. And it's a way of learning.
It's also a great way, as you send your work out and you're getting no's back or whatever, to occupy yourself to figure out, how am I going to reach my audience? So that means finding out who are the bloggers who write about this category of the bookstore. You can start commenting on their blogs, engaging with them, becoming friends with them, or if you prefer Twitter, or whatever it is, going to writers' conferences, so that you start the network and start the connections that are going to result in a way to market your book.
And if you don't have an hour, I came up with a thing called the 7-minute rule. Spend 7 minutes. Make a timer on your phone. 7 minutes. Just spend 7 minutes doing whatever it is you like to do. And if you don't like going on Facebook, don't go on Facebook. If you don't like going on Twitter, don't go on Twitter. Find something you like, or Instagram, whatever it is. Maybe it's your website that you want to have somebody build, or build yourself, and populate it with interesting things that pertain to what you're writing about. 7 minutes, but you have to do it every single day. You got to water it. You got to put the shit in it. You got to make sure the sun's shining on it. 7 minutes every day, and then devote the rest of your time to your writing. Next
question. I have about 50,000 social media followers. Is that enough to be a platform? Which is a great question.
It's a very interesting question.
So a couple years ago, publishers were like, people need to have, 50,000, 100,000 followers. That has to be the number in order for us to think they have a platform. Now people are saying, we don't care if you have 1 million followers. We just want to know that these people actually, we prefer to have 10,000 followers that really care about you and watch everything that you do and buy everything that you do. So the number itself has become less important, though that's a very impressive number.
It's great.
It's terrific.
Yes.
But if you've gathered 50,000 people, for example, on Twitter, and a bunch of them are, people who advertise some kind of cream,
yes,
that's not going to help getting your book out there.
Or they're Nigerian princesses.
Yeah. Do you want to say more on that?
Well, recently Facebook had to admit publicly that 20 million of their people are actually robots.
Right.
Did you see this?
Right.
Well, their stock went down.
We don't want to belittle the 50,000
no,
people
we
they've
love the
gathered,
50,000
which
people.
is huge
it's
and wonderful and great. But you want to be sure that those are actually engaged people with you.
Yes.
Okay. If I've sent my novel out in the past, years ago, and do I have to worry about sending it to any of the same people I did before? No.
No. There's a good chance that the people you sent it to are no longer at that place.
Or even if you want to send it to the same person.
Same person.
Now, the only thing is, if someone completely read your novel, then you want to acknowledge that that's the case, and that you've spent the last 3 years working on it, and they were kind enough to read it. They gave you great advice. You took the advice, and here's the new version.
Absolutely. Yes. Well done.
Thank you.
Whew.
Okay. At least 100 queries to agents. I've gotten manuscript requests and tons of rejections, but still no agent. And Ariel assisted me with the query. It's pretty freaking fantastic. Now what? So the fact that you've gotten manuscript requests says your query is on the right track.
Yes.
It can be tweaked here and there depending on what those numbers are. Again, we say about 10% is a good response rate. 100 queries, if you've gotten 10 requests, that would be a good response rate. But if people are then turning down the book, then it gets to the manuscript. And that's where those first lines, first pages often become critical.
Yeah. Agents are trained to say no. They're looking, they've got 50 queries in their inbox, and then tomorrow they'll have another 50. They're just looking for a reason to go, okay, I can reject that one and get on to the next one. So you'll send us manuscripts and they say, well, the book doesn't really get going until about page 75. No one's going to read 74 of your pages where the book doesn't really get going yet to get to page 75. The book's got to get going with the first sentence. If they like the first sentence, they'll read the second sentence. They'll read the second paragraph. If they like the first page, they'll read the next page. If they don't like anything on the first page, that's it.
And you can often tell if people have read beyond anything, because you generally get a generic rejection letter if people have not read into the book.
Right.
If people have taken the time
they're gonna probably
to
say
read,
something.
they usually say something like, the characters weren't compelling
I love
to
this,
me,
but I didn't like
blah,
this.
blah, blah.
Yes.
So that's another thing. So often you can tell if it is the beginning of the book if you're just getting generic no's over and over and over again.
But if you get, 7 rejections that say, geez, the ending didn't really work for me, well, guess what? Probably the ending doesn't work.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing.
Yeah.
Read your manuscript out loud before you send it out.
Yeah.
Read it out loud. It's so valuable. I can't even say it. And a lot of people don't do it.
Okay. I am writing picture books. If I'm torn between 2 manuscripts to send to an agent, is it okay to send 2 at once? 1, 2, 3.
No! 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 Do not do that.
It really, really makes sense to choose a book and to go full speed ahead on that book. People don't like getting multiple submissions
We
from one
sometimes
person.
get these queries that say, I'm sending you my novel, my cookbook, my picture book, an autobiography of my cat, and my play that I've just written. Well, no one's gonna, you just reject those things. You don't even look at them because the person just doesn't have a clear vision of what they're doing. Send one great book. That's what, and also to start your query with, this is the first book in a 17-book series, is probably not a good idea. If it is part of a series, put that at the end. Publishers, agents want one book that's going to sell 1 million copies. Then you'll get to do.
Now, one thing you can do if you're confused about which book is you can send one book out to a set of agents and the other book out to another set of agents and see which you get a better response to if you can't figure out which is more marketable. Yeah. But don't send 2 to one agent. Okay, next question. Does David have beautiful purple hair?
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
Thank you.
That's a real question. Yeah. Okay.
It's natural too.
How do I send you my query letter? I should say letters. I actually wrote 2 of them. Double torture.
What?
Are you going to answer the question?
Oh, you were going to answer the question. The question is that how do they send it to us?
I think so. Our email addresses are david@thebookdoctors.com and mine is ariel@thebookdoctors.com.
So easy.
And you can go ahead and send us your query letter.
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. After many beta readers, I found an agent who queried 15 publishers, large and small. All 15 requested the manuscript. None bought it. What to do? Revise the book, find a new agent, write a new book.
That's a very, very complicated and good question.
Can I take this?
You may take this.
Okay. So this is where understanding why the book didn't sell is so important. So a very frank conversation with your agent is really important.
By the way, if your agent is amenable, I always have the agent send me the rejections.
You need to see all the rejections.
Because the agents oftentimes don't do that.
You need it, and for the people that rejected by phone, if that's the case, you need to understand why they rejected. If you get 2 or more, preferably 3 or more consistent comments, there is an issue with that part of your book. Now, it may be a marketplace issue, which is I can't
My sales team doesn't know how to sell this book.
No, we're not doing dystopian YA right now, okay? Then that's also something that you're going to have to figure out how to overcome. But maybe that doesn't mean there's anything wrong particularly with your book per se. So understanding what is wrong, then you need to assess, still have enthusiasm for this book if you come to an agreement about how to revise it.
Right.
If you feel that they've lost heart, it can be very hard to get them to motivated to do it in the right way.
And a lot of agents, once they've sent it out to 15, they're done. That's it. Agents are like that, obviously, but there are a big chunk of agents who, when they've been rejected 15 times, that's it. They're done.
And then the last question is, should I write a new book? Very often, people's first book isn't their first book that they sell.
Right.
Often it's second, third, or fourth book.
Yeah.
So if it's a marketplace issue and a book issue and your agent isn't on it and you have something else brewing, start writing no matter what, because you don't know what's going to happen with that book. But this book may be book number 2 for you.
The first book I wrote was a piece of I didn't even know, this was an idiot I was. It was a piece of experimental fiction. I didn't even know it was experimental fiction. I thought I just wrote a nice book. But each chapter was 1 page long. That should have been my first clue. This was, something not in the beaten path. So I finally found an agent. And she said, "Oh, I love this book. It's so unusual. It's so strange and interesting. But did you really kill your dad?" I'm like, "No, I didn't kill my dad. It's a piece of fiction." Well, she says all pieces of fiction are about, they're basically memoirs of the person who wrote them. She said, "Well, what's your story?" And I told her about my real life story, what happened to me. And she said, "Oh my God, that's the book I wanted to write. I wanted to write a book about what happened to me, but I was too scared to. It was too personal and too weird what happened to me." So she said, "Oh my God, well, that's the book you need to write. That's the book I wanted to write." She said, "Well, let's figure it out." And she helped me develop what the story was going to be and the style it was going to be, because I wanted to write like this pulpy, stupid book in the true crime section of the bookstore. So we actually went to the bookstore and went to the true crime. They're all in this shitty paper with these horrible covers. And then we went to the memoir section, and they're all beautiful with these hard covers and gorgeous, artwork. And she's like, "Would you want that or that?" I'm like, "Well, I want that. I want that." So then that was the book that she sold, and it sold very, very quickly because that was the right book to write at the time. And I put so much time and effort into that first book. It took me 20 years to sell that book after I finished writing it.
Absolutely. All right. Can you recommend an editorial service that is reasonably priced?
Oh, so reasonably.
So that is actually a question that is difficult to answer, because on the one hand, if you have a certain budget, you need to spend within that budget, and there are great people who are inexpensively priced. However, there's a lot of really not good people
Shysters
who are inexpensively priced. So no matter who you choose, you want to make sure that they understand the marketplace and have deep experience with books. Like, a lot of people might have done textbooks, or they might have done newsletters or cookbooks or whatever.
And you're sending them your dystopian YA fantasy novel.
Yeah.
They don't have no clues. Many of these genres, they have very specific rules that you got to follow. On page 1, this has to happen. On page 50, this has to happen. And if they don't know those rules, they're not going to be doing you a service.
Right. So you can spend a relatively little amount of money and not get results.
Make sure you do your research, but really vet the people before you give anybody any money in the publishing business. Yeah. Anybody. Talk to one of their clients, a couple of their clients. Ask them what kind of work they've done. Make sure that they are the right person for you, and they have the experience and the knowledge and the know-how to get you to yes.
There you go. Okay.
By the way, we also edit books.
But we're not reasonable.
We're not reasonable priced at all. That's why I laughed. We are totally unreasonable.
Do you mention, however, you get great bang for your buck? So there you go. Okay. Do you mention the name of an agent who's interested in your manuscript in letters to other agents? No, you do not.
No.
So you can say I have someone interested, but don't say who
But
it is.
I wouldn't make something. Don't make it up either, because you can get caught in that later.
Okay, so this is perhaps the most important question. When are you coming to Hawaii again?
Oh, shiznickles.
Kathy, you got to get us to Hawaii.
Oh, man.
This is from Kathy Knorr, who we met at a writers' conference
We had a gig in Hawaii all lined up, and then what?
I thought you were going to tell about the worst
we did
writers'
go to the worst
conference we met, which Kathy was at. That's a whole other story. We're not going to get into that now.
Webinar.
That's actually a short story.
It could be another.
Okay. Next question. How should a manuscript be formatted? Double spaced, it is a must. Better to have it one-sided than two-sided. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Double-sided, double spaced, one-sided. Don't bind it.
Don't bind it. I do not.
And use a serif font like Times New Roman. Okay.
What about Garamond?
That's fine too. I'm writing short stories. Do you have any publishing suggestions for short story writers?
Yes, turn them into novels. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Get them published in the New Yorker.
Published.
Yeah, get them
in the New Yorker. Yes.
That's
but getting them published, period, is the number one thing that you can do to get a short
There's
story
so
collection.
many literary magazines that no one reads besides the people who are published in them, and yet they're meaningful.
And prizes are very important
huge.
there as well. And just forget about the big five, unless you get published in the New Yorker.
Then you're set.
Okay.
Boom, done.
Okay.
And by the way, and also, even if you get published in an online literary outfit, that still is good. It still works.
Yeah. If one agent has rejected a submission, is it acceptable to submit to another agent in the agency who also reps the genre, assuming there is no clear directive on the agency's website? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Even if they say don't submit, don't submit simultaneously.
No, not at the same time.
But you have to take every opportunity you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a document question. When I copy and paste my query in sample pages, the doc loses its format. Is that okay? I spent a lot of time, sweat, and tears on that format. No, it's not okay.
No, it's got to look beautiful.
No, it's got to be right. So I've had this problem sometimes with things before, and you're going to have to put it in. I don't know if you're using Word or if you're using Google Docs or whatever, but whatever you're using is not compatible with your email, and you have to get something. Christy might actually have an answer to that in the group chat, because she's very good with that kind of thing. She's good with
that thing. Among many things she's good at.
Many things. Yeah. Okay, so we've come to the end of the questions, at least for the moment. If you have more questions, please post them quickly, because we only have 7 minutes left.
Occur to you, terminate this, please send us a question by email. That's perfectly fine. David at the Book Doctors, Ariel at the Book Doctors.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so to wrap this up, and I know Christy also has sent other things that we're supposed to wrap up with that I'm always very bad at doing, obviously, here. But before we get to those, we just want to say we really feel for you.
Yeah.
And we ourselves have been many times the victims of rejection.
Survivors.
We're
not victims, we're survivors.
And in fact, I will just tell quickly, and then David will tell a perseverance story. But my book that is coming out, that my most recent book that I sold, was rejected by essentially everyone. And I gave up after the first one. I was like, oh, well, okay, well, that book isn't getting published. And David was like, what is wrong with you? And in the end, a fantastic publisher ended up buying the book, great publisher.
But you tweaked it. You kept tweaking it. The title and what the whole intent of the book was.
But I just want to say I was completely defeated by it. So we understand the feeling. And we know how hard it is. And if anybody wants to just send us an email at any point saying, I'm really down, I'm frustrated, whatever, just send us an email. Absolutely. And we'll send you a little note back.
We will.
To pep you up.
Give you a pep up. Yeah.
Okay.
See, disappointed, devastated, pissed off. Okay,
Yeah.
there's the,
Yeah.
there's the yin and the yang. So as I said, I wrote this book that was unbeknownst to me, a piece of experimental fiction, and I showed it to everybody. I was living in Venice Beach. I'd walk up and down the beach and go, would you read my novel? And finally, somebody who used to be my acting agent, my commercial acting agent, said, oh, I like this book. Do you mind if I send it to my goddaughter? She's a literary agent. I said, do I mind? Whew, I'll name my first child after you, which I didn't. So she hooked me up. And I sent this agent the manuscript. This is before email. And a week later, I followed up. I called. I said, did you get the manuscript? She says, well, I've already lost the manuscript. I'm like, oh, this person's a moron. This person's an idiot. I didn't say that out loud, but inside I was saying that. So I sent her another copy. Turned out years later, it was found. It had fallen behind the desk.
Mm-hmm. True.
So a month later, after she had gotten the manuscript, I called on the phone. I said, hi, how's it going? Are you doing okay? What's going on with you? And I didn't even mention the book. And she said, afterwards, the agent said, oh, I felt very guilty that I hadn't read the book. So my book rose from the bottom of a 10-foot pile about 3 feet up. And a month later, I called, and I was just as nice as I could be. She'd mentioned something about her shoes. I said, how do those shoes work out for you anyway? And so my book rose another 3 feet. 9 months. Once a month, I called this agent. Nicest nice could be. And finally, guilt rose. My manuscript rose to the top of the pile of unread manuscripts. So it was around Christmas time. I said, look, I was living in Venice Beach. I said, I'm coming to New York. I wasn't coming to New York at all. I said, I'm coming to New York. And perhaps we could discuss my manuscript when I get there. She said, okay, yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I haven't read the manuscript. When you come here, I will take you to lunch and we will talk about your book. I hung up immediately, booked a ticket to New York City, flew to New York from Los Angeles, solely with the purpose of having lunch with an agent. Now that seems slightly desperate. But desperate times call for desperate measures. We went to lunch. She bought me lunch. If the agent doesn't buy you lunch, don't walk, run. She bought me the lunch. And she said, oh, I like the manuscript, but it needs some work. It needs this and that and the other. And the things she told me were smart. Now, I was a screenwriter in Hollywood. You have these meetings where these people tell you the most idiotic things to do to your manuscript. Oh, can we make this black guy? Can we make him from outer space? No, we can't make him from outer space. That's another story. So she gave me these smart, really intelligent things to do with my manuscript. I'm like, okay, this is great. And she was also really cute. So a couple of days later, I called her up. I said, hey, you want to go to a movie? She's like, yeah, let's go to a movie. So I went to a movie and et cetera, et cetera. And then she agreed to represent my book. And 2 years later, she agreed to marry me. A child, which is both of our child. Together we had it. So you see, you can't have a happy ending.
Okay, a couple last questions we're going to do quickly. What writers' conferences will you be at in 2018?
Irma Bombeck.
Irma Bombeck, which is fabulous. We're going to be at the Rutgers Writers Conference.
Right.
This is all on our website, so you can, and we'll be in our
one
newsletter.
In Montclair here also.
Yep.
Are we doing any SCBWI this year?
I can't remember.
We may be doing any SCBWI.
Okay. And do you have more upcoming events? So we are doing one of our our pitch webinars in January. Right. So if you buy a book and you send us a receipt, it's free. Then if you self-publish, will that stop an agent from looking at your book or being interested? This is a complicated question.
I did that. I self-published a book and then I sold it, but I didn't tell the publisher that it was self-published. And as soon as they said yes, I took that book out of, I deleted it from where it was self-published. They never knew it was self-published. If they'd asked, I would have said yes, but they didn't ask, so I didn't tell. It was a don't ask.
Unless you had great sales numbers, but that's very unusual.
20,000 copies of your book. Yeah.
I know Kardashian, so is my memoir a dead end for me?
No, it's not a dead end. No.
It is not.
No. Can you get compromising pictures of a Kardashian? That's the question. No, your memoir is not dead. No, it's just got to be great, and it's got to go to the right to publish this particular memoir. Send us the thing and let us take a look at it, the memoir.
Okay, so last couple things that are just flagrant self-promotion for a minute. We apologize in advance, which is that if subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll be notified about these events. Same with signing up with our newsletter, which we send. We send out.
It's real good.
It's real good.
It's so good.
And there's lots of information in there.
Tons of information.
We want to thank Christy for making this happen.
Christy, rock out.
There is one last question, and then this is it. Great writing, bad premise, and also great premise, bad writing about the exact same book. Any advice? Persevere.
Perseverance, baby.
That's it.
That's it.
If you know, this is the life of being a writer. That is so typical. Cannot even tell you. Good night, everybody.
Buonanotte. Buonanotte.
Chatting with you all.
Chatting with you.
Take care.
Webinaring with you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.